Hari Om and a very good evening to all. Guruji's US lecture series now just a few days away. Audiences from Canada too could join in. The essence from our scriptures distilled into an unmissable 5-part series, Eternal Wisdom, a Manual to Life. We request as many to attend the program and also to share this invitation with your known group of family and friends. Do remember to click on the link, fill and submit the Google form to enable us to keep you informed of our wisdom programs. We find that we have made an error in the bank IFSC number in the Guru Dakshina announcement made last Sunday. The correct IFSC number is UTIB 0003281. Details are displayed on the screen. We deeply regret any inconveniences this error could have caused. Please accept our sincere apologies once again. We will be again posting the corrected bank details on the Satsang group. Namaskaram.
Hari Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Bhaja Govindam verses 21 till the end. Start with the first verse. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Samprapte San Nihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karane. Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani Jathare Shayanam, Iha Samsare Bahudustare, Kripaya Pare Pahi Murare. Ratyacharpata Virachita Kanthaha Punya Punyavi Varjita Panthaha Yogi Yogani Yojita Chitto Ramate Balon Matavadeva. Kastvam koham kuta ayataha kame janani kome tataha iti paribhavaya sarvamasaram vishvam tyatva swapna vicharam. Tvayi mayi chanya traiko vishnuhu vyartham kopyasi maya sahishnuhu bhava samachittaha sarvatra tvam vanchasya chiradhyadi vishnu tvam shatrau mitre putre bandhau ma kuru yatnam vigraha sandhau sarvasminnapi pashyatmanam sarvatrotsruja bhedajnanam kamam krodham lobham moham tyaktvatmanam pashyati soham atmajnanavi hinamudha te pachyante narakanigudha Geyam Gita Nama Sahasram Dheyam Shripati Rupamajasram Neyam Sajjana Sange Chetam Deyam Dinaja Naya Chavetam Sukhata Kriyate Rama Bhogaha Paschadantasha Rire rogaha yadhyapi loke maranam sharanam tadapi namunchati papacharanam arthamanartham bhavaya nityam nasti tata sukha lesha satyam putradapi dhana bhajam bhitihi sarvatraisha vihitaritihi pranayamam pratyaharam nityanityavi vekavicharam japya sametasa madhividhanam kurvavadhanam mahadavadhanam Guru Charanam Bhuja Nirbhara Bhaktaha Samsaradvyachi Radbhava Muktaha Sendriya Manasa Niyamadevam Drakshasi Nijahrida Yastham Devam Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate Samprapte san nihite kale nahi nahi rakshati dukrin karane nahi nahi rakshati dukrin karane nahi nahi rakshati dukrin karane. The last we discussed was the 26th verse, which said Kamam, Krodham, Lobham, Moham, Tyaktvatmanam Pashyati Soham. Talks about leaving your desire, anger, greed, and delusion. One sees the self, he am I. Soham, Saha, Aham, Saha is the truth. I am that. So the entire spiritual journey is measured with how you handle your own desires, how you deal with your own mind. As I've said, it all boils down to how you handle your own mind. Is your mind where you want it to be? In many a case, the mind has a nature of its own. The mind has a tendency of its own. It doesn't listen to you. Why it doesn't listen to you is because you don't have the wisdom in the form of the strength of the intellect. It just boils down to this. You don't have the tool whereby you're able to discipline or impose a kind of not really an impose, but rather be a factor which can control the mind. In fact, intellect should not, or it doesn't strangle the mind. It's actually nothing but policing the mind. It just gives it gives the freedom to the mind, but it's all under perfect control. Now, if you remember, the scripture is saying here, the text is saying that you have to transcend, you have to control the desire. When you take a stock of one's life today, one's mind is running havoc. Today, our mind is running berserk. It is unable to lend us a sense of peace and equanimity. An agitated mind is no good. It not only destroys your peace and happiness, it destroys your interaction, your relationship with the world. It has serious consequences over your own physical personality. So remember, we spoke about the 3 standpoints. The first state is to be full of desires, to be a victim of desires. And the state we ought to reach is a state where you have no desire. You have conquered the desire. You have transcended the desire. Now, these are the 2 extremities. Now, what is the medium? What is the middle path? What is the passage to get there? As I've said, there's nothing wrong to have a desire. But what you can start trying to do is control the desiring in the desire, control the craving in the desire, control the thirst, the lust, the obsession, the uncontrollable nature in the desire. If you are able to inject that spirit of control over your desire, you are well and truly in direction to reach that state of desirelessness or a state of no desire. But how do you go about doing it is try to change the nature of your desire. The desiring in the desire. There are many things that you can do to the desire. First, try to change its nature. What is natural state of the desire in most people? When I say ask this in most people, the nature of the desire is, what's the nature of the desire? If you examine your own mind, you would know. If you look around, you would know. The most prevalent state of a human mind, well, I think it's resonating correctly in all the answers that you're commenting. The nature of the mind is naturally very selfish. Selfish. So what you got to try to do is, in fact, I've hardly seen people, very rare are those people who are naturally inclined to be unselfish, who are naturally givers. Very rare. So if you just examine the society, examine the people, examine those you interact with day in and day out, the nature of their mind is they are takers. Very small percentage of them are actually unselfish. And I remember in the ashram where I studied and came back, there used to be a servant, and his name is Keshav. You know, he's a cook of the ashram. And there were days, initial days, he used to actually come and serve the handful of us. You know, over the years it evolved and many more students came in. It became impossible. Then became a buffet style. Self-help was the best way possible. But then initial days, 15 of them, you know, when I joined in 91. And so it was a very, very small number. And he used to come and actually dish out course by course, come and give the vegetable and the salad and the rice and the dessert. And that guy had such a big heart. Believe me, he will take 2 scoopful and he'll serve you. We have to take, Keshav, enough paan, vanda, no, nahi chahiye, he Maharashtrian fellow, nahi chahiye, bas hai, let it be the feathers. Bahut hai saab, bahut hai. Plenty is there, don't worry. He used to have such a big heart. He used to keep serving. Just that heart was so big of his. And we used to go and hug that fellow, elderly fellow, so sweet, so pure, so giving nature. And I know a relative of mine, whenever we used to visit her home, we used to have a meal and go to her home. She would have invited you for lunch. We would have had lunch and gone to her house. So she will she'll come and serve you. There 100% she'll serve, no self-service there. She'll only have to serve you. So she'll take a spoon and in the corner chutney, little bit curry, little bit this. And if you ever go at tea time for coffee, the coffee or tea, the glass is this size, and then that quarter of it only will get it. All her life, she has lived a selfish life. All her life, they saved and saved only for their kith and kin, for their own children. And today, both her children are not bothered to take care of her. Both her children. Husband is no more. How life treats you, it just what goes around comes back. So all your life, you're living a selfish life, is going to haunt you. So one way of controlling is try to change the nature of desire from selfish to unselfish. You've got to have a magnanimous heart. First and foremost, learn to be a giver. And whenever we talk of giving, in fact, the next verse is going to say that when you give, one of the traits of a giver is you must feel the pinch. Learn to feel a pinch when you give. That's when you're truly giving. It's a very beautiful quality that we'll get to it soon. So change the nature of a desire from selfish to unselfish. Transform it, and surely you will get to a state where you are riding above the desire. So remember, learn to live a life which is opposed to desire. What is a life which is opposed to desire? The entire humanity is chasing desires. Now remember, the language of the Shastras, whenever it's a desire, it means selfish nature. I and my, that's about all. Now what is that which is opposed to desire? What else can your life be driven on? What is opposed to your own selfish desire? What is opposed to it? Some of you who have heard me on this concept should be easy to understand. But what is opposed to desire? Your whole life, your entire life should be driven on that. Either you are desiring or dash. Service, Alkama says service, very true. But it should, answer also should rhyme. Huh? So you're looking at a word which should rhyme. That should make you think in that direction. If you say sacrifice, a life of sacrifice, compassion, dravya is only material thing. But what should be your life? What's the principle your life must be driven on? Yajna, wonderful word, beautiful word, yajna. Loka sangraha, this was a word we learned recently, beautiful, yes, loka sangraha, for the benefit of all. See, all these answers is opposed to selfish, unselfish, giver, taker, desire, it should rhyme. And that which puts everything to rest, fire. What is fire? We are not talking of fire and smoke here. Did you intentionally type that, Srimati Ma? What is fire here? Just a minute. I think you'll be able to. Yeah, now you can. Come on. Fire doesn't rhyme with desire. It does, huh? Okay. No, literally don't go with the rhyming now. I'm here and we are in a philosophical class, please. Huh? I can get that, no problem. So, in fact, remember the word, the more I delay, the more frustrated you will be. The more frustrated you are, you have chance of remembering. The opposed to desire is to live a life of deserving. You must learn to let your life be driven by deserving. It is opposed to desire. I think Jayashree Prabhu Ma, I think she wants to say something. 1 minute, Ma. No, we still can't hear you. It seems to be. If there's some difficulty at your end, try to type in. Use the chat box to communicate yourself. So now you can, please.
Aspire.
Aspire. Yes, yes. Aspire again talks of something higher, something greater, something beyond yourself, something divine in nature. Very true, very true. But when you do that, then how are you provided for? What are you driven by? What is it that caters to you or your requirements? Because you always worry, okay, when I work for a higher goal, what about me? And there's a law that governs your life and my life is you get what you deserve, never what you desire. In spite of that, if you constantly keep desiring, you're only going to be paying the price of riding on desire. The law of life, we all need to be taught. When we talk of eternal wisdom, when we talk of these laws of life, these are the laws that need to be ingrained in our life much before we enter the arena of life. And what is one such law is this, that you get what you deserve, never what you desire. The world is not meant to satisfy your desires. And the more selfish and self-centered and full of expectations you are, your life is inundated with kamam, krodham, lobham, moham. So from desire comes anger, delusion, greed, and the variety of emotions we spoke about. All right, so you got to, how to get to the deserving, ride above the desire. Rise above the desire. Can you rise above your selfish desire? Can you stop thinking of your own personal needs? Not easy. The only way you can do good to yourself is by stop thinking of yourself. Then what will happen to me? That's the problem. If I stop thinking of myself, what will happen to me? Nothing will happen. Try it out. Clean drop thinking of yourself. That's the challenge. And deserving is when you come to a point, a mere sankalpa is enough to get whatever you desire. Whatever, if at all you desire, a mere sankalpa is a passing thought. It's enough to get what you want. Rather than investing your life's times, efforts, and energy just to get your selfish desires fulfilled, rise above the desire. The law of life is when you rise above the desire, the object of desire seeks you. So only the position changes. When you are desiring, what's happening? The object of desire is ahead of you. You are chasing the object, isn't it? I want that. I want that. I desire that. I crave that. I hope I can enjoy that. So the object of desire is front of you and you are behind it. The further you run, what does experience say? The further it recedes, the further it gets away from you. Now what we are saying is, come to a point where the mere sankalpa is enough to get what you want. Rise above the desire, the object of desire seeks you. So you are standing and the object of desire is coming towards you and say, please have me, please possess me, please enjoy me. And Christ said, hey, get thee behind me. I will have none at thy hands. That was the words of Christ. He said to Satan, I will have none at thy hands. I am not for sale here. Please be behind me. I will have none to take to do with you. You can't tempt me. I will not fall for you. So you always maintain the stance that you will try to purify the nature of desire. That's the only way you'll get over your desire. And that process is known as, so what is the process of transforming the desire from selfish to unselfish? The thinking is right. Let's conclude with that. What is the conclusion of this? So the process of converting the nature of selfish to unselfish, what do you call that? I'll come to the question, Sri Hari. No, I'll just come there. But before I get that, the process of converting the nature of selfish to unselfish, what do you call that? That process. Sacrifice, wisdom, generosity, evolution, cleansing of the mind, understanding the desire, transformation. Very interesting. Chitta Shuddhi, magnanimous, very, very poetic words. Discipline and self-control, very true. In fact, that word is the most common known word in spirituality. What's the most common word you use? Oh, somebody's exhausted already. Don't worry. Sublimation. In fact, the most common, innocuously seeming word, but we don't know the depth of it, the grandeur of that word is known as yoga. Yoga is the process of transcending your limitedness and embracing the completeness, the totalness, the oneness. So you're shedding your limited self, you're trying to embrace the bigger self. That union of wanting to get to something beyond yourself is yoga. And in the process of getting to that union with something higher, you will have to change the nature of your little self. You'll have to transform yourself beyond yourself to embrace the larger self, selfish to unselfish, and then you go beyond that and you drop that very desire. Remember what we said, man minus desires equals God. You'll have to go about purifying the desire, keep burning the desire, keep changing the nature of desire. And when the desire drops off, you reach the state of Godhood realization right within you. It starts unfolding itself. You don't gain realization. You are that. It's just that it's covered by the desire. So when you keep unfolding the layers of your grossness, selfishness, the self starts expressing itself. Why does a person appear divine? Why does a person appear demoniac? Why does a person appear a saintly? Why does a person appear a sinner? Is the self in a sinner any less? Is the Atman in a demoniac any less? Is the Atman in a tamasic person any less? I can gauge from the way you're nodding your head. Obviously not. But then why is a sinner a sinner? Is because of the desires that are covering up. It is that thick veil of desires that's covering the self. As we say, the kosha in Sanskrit, the various koshas. Koshas means a layers. These are various sheets. I'm sure you all have heard this word koshas. Koshas are sheets, the various sheets that's covering the self. What are the 5 sheets? The 5 sheets are Annamaya kosha, Pranamaya kosha, Manomaya kosha, Vijnanamaya kosha, Anandamaya kosha. Kosha is sheet, the food sheet, the mental sheet, so the vital sheet, the mental sheet, the intellectual sheet, and the Anandamaya kosha is the bliss sheet. So all these sheets are covering the self. Because of these various layers of covering the self seemingly is obscured. But in some who has got rid of some of the layers or these vestures or the sheets which is covering the self starts expressing itself. Radiance is seen, and that radiance is perceived in a spiritual man, in a divine person, but it gets very blurred, it gets very darkened. ignorance is seen in a person where the veil is thicker. And even the language, when you say sheath, the sword is put into a sheath, isn't it? Now, when you put a sword into a sheath, the sheath doesn't touch the tip of the sword. So the sword doesn't get blunt the n number of times you keep putting the sword into the sheath. The sharpness of the blade remains. So sheath is that which covers it but doesn't contact it. Similarly, the vestures are just covering the self. They don't influence the Atman in you. It just covers it beautifully, so closely, but yet never comes in contact with it. So the Atman is pure and immaculate. What you've got to do is just start removing it. How do you do that? Through yoga. Yoga is the means of trying to get to that something beyond yourself, something greater, something purer. So try to shed that selfishness in every act, every emotion, every thought, everything that you do. Can I be a little more? Can I embrace the stance of a giver, not a taker? Can I be more sacrificial? Not non-sacrificial, not non-yajna. I need to embrace that spirit of yajna. This is the only way you have a chance to get out of the clutches of your desires and the emotions. If you choose not to, if you choose to hold on to your desires, as he said, fools who lack this self-knowledge, they are tortured as captives in hell. You will go through a hell of a life. And I don't have to define and tell you what hell is. Hell is something which you go through the mental state of agitations and sin and the pain of all this negativity that come and destroy the sanctity and purity of your own mind. So do they visit you or are they distant to you? It depends on, are you leading a life of yajna, which is yoga, or are you leading a life of non-yoga, non-yajna? One and the same. All right. Okay. I think there was a question a little earlier. Okay. Sri Hari is asking, Guruji, what is the difference between desire and a goal? I'm glad you asked. I've mentioned this before. See, the difference between, please, we have to understand the language of the Shastras, the Vedas. Whenever they use the word desire, the desire has a negative connotation. Desire always means it is selfish, self-centered, a personal interest. When you do something for your own personal well-being, it is called a desire. But the same act, when it is driven to a larger cause, it is a goal. It is a purpose. It is an ideal. It is a vision. You have a greater purpose in life. So the moment it becomes unselfish, it is called a goal. The moment it is selfish, it is a desire. All right, trust that clarifies. Now, the section of the hell part, which I have just repeated before, or just mentioned before I answered that question, is the second half of the verse. He says, Atma jnana vihina mudha te pachante narakani gudha, which means those fools who lack this knowledge of having commanded or found a way how to get out of the clutches of the desires. This is the knowledge we're talking about. One who lacks this knowledge of not falling a prey to your desire, rising beyond that, such people, they are tortured as captives in hell. Refers to one who pays the price for falling a prey to the desire. The classic example is Ravana, isn't it? Ravana fell a prey to the desire for Sita. That's all. He just wanted. And the beauty is, all our minds are like Ravana. Remember that. Ramayana is only telling that Ravana is there right within you. And how does Ravana's mind function in us? Okay, Shivaji, Solunga sir, how does Ravana's mind function in all of us?
Dil mange more.
Ama. Dil mange more. Enna sir, enna advertisement sir adu?
I want more.
I want more. But how does it actually express itself? How does a Ravana in us function?
Not satisfied and seeking more and more.
Not satisfied and seeking more and more. Very true. See, the beauty of the mind is it has an amazing knack of convincing you that happiness is in something that you do not have. Phew. It is an amazing talent the mind has got. Every one of us have fallen a prey to it. Okay. Sri Hari has raised the hand. Where are you? Can the person be given the access, please? I think the person is in the second page. Are you able to give the access? I don't know whether you've been able to be given the access. Anything, please spell it out clearly in the chat box. I'll try to clarify that. So as I was saying, the tendency of the human mind that it has convinced you that happiness is there in something you do not have, and that which you do not have is just around the corner. I just get there, I just get that, it is just beyond my reach. It's very, very reachable. And let me get there, I'll be happy. And this is the delusive feeling the mind makes you believe, and you're fallen a prey to that mental delusion. And that is the Ravana in you, and you will fall up. If you fall a prey to it, you're in hell. It's amazing. It's amazing how we all fall a prey at different times, in different ways. So this is what the 26th verse has said. Right, so let's move on to the next verse, verse 27. Geyam Gita Nama Sahasram Dhyeyam Shripati Rupamajasram Neyam Sajjana Sange Chetam Deyam Dinaja Naya Chavetam. Geyam Gita Nama Sahasram Dhyeyam Shripati Rupamajasram Neyam Sajjana Sanghe Chetam Deyam Dinaja Naya Chavetam. Now the verse says, Bhagavad Gita and the Sahasranamam, the Vishnu Sahasranamam referring to, should be chanted. Meditate upon the form of the Lord of Lakshmi, which is Vishnu, the mind associated with the good and the wealth given to the needy. So here in this verse, he's giving the 4 spiritual disciplines known as the Bahiranga Sadhana, the disciplines at the external level. And in the 29th verse, if I'm not wrong, where he gives the 30th verse, actually, he gives the Antaranga Sadhana, which is the internal disciplines. So just to draw a difference between the external disciplines and the internal disciplines. So at the material level, the first thing is at the material level, what should you do? Wealth given to the needy. Deyam dina janaya chavittam. The material wealth given to the needy. Now, before you start giving, it is important that you learn to be a giver first. Then you decide what you want to give, whom you want to give. So this quality will appeal to givers. If you're a taker, it's no use. Most of us are takers. But we got to learn to be a giver. And once you are a giver, it is important. You must understand there are only two types of givers. There are only two types of people in the world. Not with reference to giving. Majority of people don't give. No, that's my observation. Majority of people do not give. They are takers. And the small minority of people who are givers, they give indiscriminately. They give impulsively. They give without reason, without thought, without an understanding. It's impulsive giving. It's indiscriminate giving. Example, when you are at a traffic light and a beggar comes and knocks at your window, begs for something. I see many people just wind down the window and they give 10, 20, 30, 50 rupees and you're done with it. You just give it and you're done. You have a heart. You feel for that person. You give it and you're done. But are you mindful of what is being done to that service you have rendered? Do you have a thought what that act can create a consequence? Am I really benefiting them? Or that act, is it really benefiting them? Or is it just to satisfy your emotion? You're giving it away. In fact, I don't know, I remember seeing a movie, I think a Hindi movie a long while ago, and it really stuck in my mind. The movie was named Traffic Light. Anybody has, am I referring to the right movie? Correct, okay. And the movie was so beautifully designed, how it's a proper system. It's a system, it's systematized, organized begging. In fact, it's a very respected profession today. It's become a profession. Guaranteed success. But the whole movie revolves around how a group of people make their living at a traffic light. And as the traffic light falls red and the entire begging community gets into action until the signal turns green, and then they just go through that motion through the day. And for some reason, the police decides to shift the traffic, remove the traffic light for a free flow, and how that changes and impacts the entire community. Very, very thought-provoking, very interesting. So I don't want to get into the pros and cons of that, but what's important for you to understand is you must learn to give. Give to those who need. At the material level, you must learn to give to those who need it. Vittam. Vittam is the wealth. Dina janaya, or the needy. Now today, when we go to marriages, when you go to functions, you give gifts to those who don't have a value of it, they don't need it, and you just showcase your, just to impress them. What are you doing? So real giving is giving to those who need it. It is not, many people in the name of giving, what do they do? In the name of giving, most people, what do they do? Unwanted surplus. What has been lying with you, accumulating dust, and it has been nuisance managing it, that is what you give away. See, it's actually getting rid of unwanted things. So in the name of giving, you are just getting rid of, it is disposing of something you do not want. It is not to give away what you don't want anymore. Remember, giving, the first principle of giving, the fundamental principle of giving is you must find out what the recipient needs. What does the recipient want? It is not what you want to give. Wealth again is not in cash here. Wealth is something that can be exchanged with sense objects, isn't it? Any commodity. So wealth also means a commodity. So you can part with something which the other person needs. I know an institution for the children, orphanage. A while ago, they had approached the Lions Institution, Lions Club, with a requirement for classrooms and upgradation of classrooms for their facility for students, orphanage. And they were running a school and they had students. They went and said, very well, we will help you, but we can only help you construct lavatories, bathrooms, but we can't give the funds for constructing of classrooms. They said, we have enough funds, we'll give you, but only construct bathrooms. Then they decided they'll construct a lavish bathroom and have classes in the bathroom because they can only get funds for bathroom. Can you imagine that? That kind of lack of application to what the recipient needs are. So at the material level, you must learn to identify the needs of the recipient. It's not what you can, what you have, it is what the recipient needs. I don't understand, Sethuramanji, what you are saying. Can you please clarify what you are saying?
This survey shows that people who are about to suicide, they try to talk to many. They go on ringing. What they want is only a listener. If someone listens to them fully without interrupting, they would drop the idea of suicide. But all the time people interrupt them and go on giving advice how to overcome their problems. This has been authenticated and proven by this psychologists. So they just want a listener only.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So it is very important for a giver to understand the needs of recipient. Can you imagine a person at the verge of suicide just want to be heard? Can I lend my ears to him? It's all that could change a life, that could save a life. Gayatri Ma asking, Guruji, when we do not know to verify our donations, but we give it by trust, is it okay? No. It is not. It's not something you can give on trust. It is your duty to find out whether your services are reaching the recipient. Is it being beneficial? Now I'll tell you two examples. One example is I know of a student from where is he from? Which part of somewhere from Europe? He was my student in Malaysia, and when I was last there, he was mentioning to me that a group of people formed a fund, and they were sending funds to some part of Africa to help a certain community there, and they will be doing every year after year, and having done for 3 years, they said it is time now we actually go and find out whether the services we have done, has it reached the right end and is it being used rightly so. So the onus is not on the receiver, but the onus is on the giver. So you don't operate on trust. It is, you start your journey with trust, but you don't continue your journey on trust. Trust has to be there, but it has to be verified. It has to be proven. It has to be experienced. That becomes a reality. You have trust on something that you do not know. But if you maintain your ignorance and keep trusting it, it is no more acceptable. So trust or faith begins your journey, but you have to experience it. And for that, you need to go beyond that initial trust. Remember that. So I hope that will clarify, Gayatri Ma. You can't hold on to the trust, but that doesn't mean you cannot start your journey if you have no faith or trust. If you don't have no trust or faith in this institution or on the person or the person who's giving this knowledge, you will fail to have an association, isn't it? But there has to have the initial faith to even receive this knowledge. But if you want to take it further, you must experience it yourself. You've got to take the next step. There was a case, literally I'm actually quoting an actual episode I have heard from another person. There was a doctor who was sending money to his sister who became a widow. This was happening in Malaysia. A doctor who was thriving in his work. He had a lot of, he was very successful doctor rather, and his only sister was a widow, and her husband didn't leave anything behind for her. And he anonymity rather, kept sending a certain amount on a monthly basis to his sister. He didn't want her to know. Perhaps she would not accept it, or maybe for some reason, he just kept sending money. And the lady kept receiving it, and from difficult times, life became comfortable. She could have access to all what her needs were, and she had only son. And over a period of 6-8 months or a year, he started getting calls from people who knew the family, who knew that he was helping them, that please stop sending money because the money is being abused. He did not heed. He kept sending the money. It was auto mode. He told his secretary to ensure that this goes, and then it was being sent, or a standing instruction given to the bank, make sure this amount gets remitted to the account. And she happily, ungrateful she was, she just kept receiving. A time came, people had to take photographs, send videos of what they were into. The son and the mother, that is, both of them got into drugs. Got into all kinds of indulgences. Until then, he did not realize that his acts of service were actually disservice. Now, I ask you, what that brother doctor did was right or wrong? Gayatri Ma, can she be given the access?
Yeah, Guruji, it is wrong. But usually what happens, there are some NGOs which approach us, so out of sympathy or something, we immediately give it off. That is what is happening like most of the times. So
therefore, as I've said, if you heard me in the beginning,
yes.
Majority of people don't, a small minority of people give indiscriminately, which is there's no reasoning. They act on emotion. Some sympathy, so everybody tries to tap that emotion of yours. You fall an emotional prey to it and you give. And these are the consequences. In the long run, it will start hurting you. In fact, you are doing disservice. So it's the onus of the giver to find out what is the recipient needs and calibrate your services so that it transforms the recipient. That is important. So it doesn't begin with giving, it ends with the transformation of the recipient. And after a while, you may have to change your service. It may not be physical service, it may be emotional service, it could be material service. You need to be very dynamic. And if you can only get into that kind of a commitment, please get into. Otherwise, namaskaram. See, if I want to speak, I rather speak sense, isn't it? I don't want to speak nonsense and rubbish and influence others' minds and guide them wrongly. If I have nothing to say, I should keep my mouth shut. Sorry, I don't have anything to say. But if I have something to say, it should help in others' lives. It should transform others. So every action of ours, in fact, the service you do is judged by what? The services you render, what is it that judges the service you do? On what basis do you judge the service? Or, I don't know, the judge is the right word, or assess. Effects of the service, the impact. Right words. In fact, it is the service you do, the consequences, the effects of the consequences. Does it transform the receiver, the outcome, the transformation in the taker, value? Yes, all is right. All is judged by the result it produces. What is the result of the service you are doing? If I am doing this service to you all, what is the result of that service? Is the knowledge going into you all? What is the feedback I get? I must be a listener. I must be very, very receptive to what the feedback is. If the consequences are wrong, I should calibrate my actions accordingly. I'm not doing business with this knowledge. I'm serving this knowledge to you all. I should be mindful of this. I just not what I can. I put in a lot of thought into what is said, how much is said, when it is said, if it all is said at all or not. I need to be careful of that, isn't it? And if at all you want to be a giver, rightly said, it has to be given at the right time, at the right place. I said, Ramanji said, many people don't give, as I said, but you are not, you don't give because the recipient needs it. This is a beautiful statement, a beautiful concept. A giver doesn't give because the taker needs it or because the recipient needs it. Why should you give? Harishji, why should you give? Not because the recipient needs it, even though I just said it is judged by the result it produces, definitely so. But above all, why should you be a giver? Yes, sir.
You give because you need to give.
What do you mean you need to give? What are you conveying with that? What does it mean? Why do you need to give?
Because of the because of the positivity it creates in you, or the
So are you not doing it for your own selfish reasons? And I feel good about it. I feel so nice giving, therefore I give. Then you're not giving for the recipient's sake, you're giving for your own sake. Is it not? I feel so happy giving. I feel a joy in giving, therefore I give. Are? Then you're very selfish, isn't it? If there's a pain in it, would you still give? If there's an effort in it, would you still give? If you feel a pinch, do you still give?
Oh, that's what you're saying. You will feel the loss of what you have. That's when it is real giving.
Well, yes. You feel.
So that's how you feel the pinch.
You feel the pinches. Sir, when I'm giving this vidya, when I'm giving this knowledge to you all, what's the loss? I don't become any less by giving this knowledge, do I? But am sacrificing my time, my resources, my energy, my life is offered into this knowledge so that this can benefit you all. So my life is being consumed in the process of giving this knowledge to you all. It's consumed. Every hour, minute goes into it. Every effort goes into this. Isn't it? So it's not always in terms of material, in terms of to what length can you go to give. But fundamentally, why are you giving? I see a few answers. We give because we have empathy for the receiver. Give because they need it. Ideally, you should. The recipient needs it. We are born to give. Everything in nature is a giver. Oh, wow. That's a beautiful answer. A pinch can still give joy. Yes, you have to feel the pinch, and also you can experience joy. Giving has to be selfless. I'm a part of the society. It's my duty to share with the society. The joy of sharing. In fact, to sum it up, if at all I can sum up, beautiful answers. The reason you give is if you do not, you become a taker. So the only reason you become a giver, because if you do not consciously become a giver, you end up being a taker. So you have to allow that thought, to embrace the thought of giving just to protect yourself from becoming selfish. It starts with that. You are doing not because the recipient needs it, because as somebody said, it becomes my duty. It is my duty to give. Everything in nature is giving. And everything in nature that gives thrives. And the moment you become a taker, you pay the price for that, going against that spirit of nature. And then when you do give, let that giving count. It must be judged rationally. It must be judged by the result it produces. You must feel a pinch. Assess the requirement of the recipient. It must transform the receiver, and so on and so forth. Here he just says, Deyam Dina Janayata Vittam. That's all he says. But when he just says, give to the needy, it's important for you to find out what service can you render. Okay, there's a question here. But isn't there a humility in taking also? There's a certain arrogance that sometimes comes from giving. I think we should learn to take gracefully as well. Absolutely, I agree with you. I agree with you that you need to receive gracefully without encashing it. So what is receiving gracefully without encashing? Receiving gracefully with gratitude. When you receive something and when there is that element of gratitude, then you are a true receiver. In fact, it is, this might come as a revelation to some. It is more difficult to be a taker than a giver. Srimati Ma, yes, please. Just a minute. I think you should be able to.
Yes, this is something I tell my father always, because he's so, he has to be the giver. And I do believe that there is so much, you have to give the other person the joy to give you as well. You cannot always be giving things to others. You should also give them the pleasure of giving to you.
Yeah.
And I think everyone wants to be a giver, and we need to enable that in them. I think that's my opinion.
My only complaint to you is you're only telling to your father you should take the mic and speak to the world about it. Very true. It is very difficult to be a taker than a giver. See, I can come and give my love to you all. But the moment I give my love, you should not encash it. The moment you encash it, you are not able to receive the love I'm giving. The moment you give love to me, I should not think, okay, what can I get out of this person? That should not be the thought. You are expressing your genuine appreciation or thankfulness or gratefulness or genuine love. But then what is my thought? Am I trying to make use of you for a certain self-benefit? Then I am not able to receive that pure love. So I am making it impure because of my selfishness. So taking necessarily doesn't mean you're a selfish person. So let's not tarnish that act of receiving itself as selfish. This is the law of life. Give and take is the law of life. So you need to adorn the role of a true giver. You need to adorn the true role of a true taker. It's so beautiful. And if we all play our roles well, it's a beautiful world out there. So it is a beautiful world. But sadly, so the proportion of a society is majority of people are takers in an impure sense. They're selfish takers. They're ungrateful. In fact, Oliver Goldsmith says the nakedness of the world can be clad with the trimmings of the vein, he says. The nakedness of the world can be clad, means can be taken care of, covered. That nakedness of the world can be clad with the trimmings of the vein. The trimmings means just the little extra, the outer parts, the non-essentials. If all were givers, the nakedness of the world can be taken care of. This, in spite of all the charity you all are doing, there's still the world is naked. You're not able to clad it. There's so much of strife and struggle and poverty and struggle and suffering. You can't change by you giving it. How do you address this problem is by mobilizing givers. If I can convert you all to be givers, if there are 100 people, if I can transform all 100 of you to be givers, what is the impact it will have in the course of your life? Rather than me just giving, I can give all what I have, but that's no use to change the world. But if I can change the mindset of people, so intellectually, spiritually, I'm able to convince you and transform you. And if you become givers, oh my God, what amount of effect it has, what influence it has on a society. But you need to grow into that stage of a giver. One needs to grow, because giving is not, even though he says at the material level, giving is not always material service. In fact, material service in the 4th chapter of the Gita, we learned in the concept of yajna. Some of you may have heard it recently. We covered it. The 4 levels of giving. He says dravya yajna, tapo yajna, yoga yajna, and swadhyaya jnana yajna. There are 4 cadres, the 4 levels of giving. The first and the lowest of giving is to give material wealth. You just write a check, give it off, not bothered. No, you are able to part with certain material service. And also remember, I wanted to make this point, you should not give just to appease your conscience, please. Don't do that. It is not in the quantum. It is never determined by percentage, but never ever give to appease your conscience. Be a giver so that you don't become a taker. And all you give, you still remain to be a taker. So you must be ever ready to be a giver. Jump at the opportunity of giving. Create opportunities to give. Don't just give to appease your conscience. It doesn't satisfy you. So the 4 levels of giving, the lowest form of service, the Gita says, is dravya, material service. Superior to material service is yoga yajna, tapo yajna. Tapaha is superior to dravya, which is physical service. Physical service is superior to material service. physical, you engage your physical body. You go through a certain amount of effort and strain to go and serve them. Physical service superior to material service. I'll give an example. You have a loaf of bread, you part with a loaf of bread. You have 2 loaves of bread. One you part, one we keep, material service. You only have 1 loaf of bread, you give that away and you starve that evening. Tapaha. Superior to dravya. Superior to tapaha is yoga yajna, service at the emotional, intellectual level. And the highest of all services a man can ever render is svadhyaya jnana yajna, is to give the knowledge of the Atman, give the knowledge of the self. And you may know it or not, that is what precisely is being done now. You are being given the very knowledge of the self. And as any giving pre-necessitates, if you want to give, you must possess it, isn't it? You must be endowed with it. You must be enriched with it so that you will part with it. So also it applies that if I have to give the knowledge of the self, I must unfold it myself first. And therefore, one has to embark on a journey of unfolding oneself, realizing oneself. And in the process, you reveal it to others. But it's a lifetime job. You can't do it part-time. You can't be worried of your livelihood. You can't be thinking of anything else but this. You need to do that. And there's no guarantee you'll attain the realization. But you have enormous faith and trust, Gayatri. That will happen. So, of all services, if you are able to do that, why not? Rise up to the level, one day you'll be able to give that knowledge of the self. So at the material level, you got to give the wealth to the needy. And then he says, Sajjana Sange Chittam. Your mind should be associated with the good. Sangha is company. Sajjana Sanghe, in the association of the good. Now this we will take it as a physical discipline, even though he says association, your mind should be associated with the good. Here is being taken physical is to ensure at all levels of your, it applies to all levels of your personality. It's not just at the mental level. It's not what emotions you entertain, but at the all your senses. From what is the most bad company you can keep the moment you get up? The worst company you can keep the moment you get up. Come on. Shiva is having a problem with that particular brand of that mobile. Huh? Enna Vasantama? Solungo. The worst company you can keep, that's as far as I'm concerned. Yes, ma?
Worst company.
Mobile.
Taking
Obviously,
the newspaper.
Obviously, you don't know because you don't do it. Correct.
Newspaper.
Yeah. So
Mobile.
Mobile, you still have a choose. I can play some Carnatic music. I can listen to some spiritual discourse. I can choose that, isn't it? Mobile is a new thing. I can do anything I want.
Newspaper headlines.
Correct. Not headlines from the beginning to the end. It's only negativity, and the more negative it is, it'll come to the headlines. Can you imagine? You begin your day, and even if it be the news channels, whether be it local or international. The other day I was giving myself little news just to know what's happening, and I was conscious of this, and I was watching BBC, I was telling my dad, did you notice then? Right from the very first breaking news till the very end, there's only negativity out there. Every subject matter, you only being highlighted what's happening in Lebanon, what happened in Beirut, what's happening in some shooting in Washington. This happened in Europe. That weather climate is so hot in Europe. This happened in the sports, negative, this negative, that negative. What is going to do is it is going to destroy you within. Even though negativity is very entertaining, but it's not going to do any good to you. In fact, I request you all to please go through the 9th verse of the same text, Bhaja Govindam. An entire verse explains how the importance of satsang. Let's chant the verse, and I'll conclude the class with the chant. Go through it and come back, and I will dwell on this, and the next rest of the verse will be taken up next week when we come again. Let's chant the verse 9. Satsangatve nisangatvam nisangatve nirmohatvam nirmohatve nishchalatatvam nishchalatatve Jivan Muktihi. Once again. Satsangatve nisangatvam nisangatve nirmohatvam nirmohatve nishchalatatvam nishchalatatve Jivan Muktihi. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.